The basic dispute is they just don't want to stop yet, and I think they will. You would say that Ukraine cannot win that war.
Miracle can happen.
This is Today As It Happened. Good Friday evening to you. I'm Andrew Rafferty here with your chronological look at the biggest events and stories of the day, from the renewed efforts to end the federal government shutdown to President Donald Trump's visit with Hungarian leader Viktor Orban. But first, our correspondent in Detroit gave us a look at how travelers are faring amid mass flight cancellations across the country. If you are traveling today, a plan B could be a good idea. Starting today, the FAA is cutting services at 40 major airports. Those cuts will start with air traffic being reduced by 4%, and they'll ramp up to, in the days ahead, to 10% of air traffic being cut by next Friday. And take a look at this map. If you are flying into or out of one of these airports, you're going to want to double check the status of your flight. These are the airports expected to feel the impact of these cuts the most. Brittany Toulis with Scripps News Detroit joins us from Detroit's airport. And Brittany, I know Detroit was one of those 40 airports that were mentioned by the Trump administration. What are things like for travelers this morning?
And your airport operations itself seems to be moving pretty smoothly, but we're seeing a lot of travelers coming up, checking these flight boards. They're feeling a little anxious because airlines have canceled 33 flights to or from DTW here. Now, I'm at the McNamara terminal. It's only Delta flying out, and you can see some of those cut flights right there on that board. Delta did say they're aiming to cancel flights a day ahead of time so customers can make new travel plans. So the people we talked with today are flying out, but they're concerned about their return trip. Getting that canceled flight notification is a lottery they do not want to win, but they're bracing to have their travel plans become another casualty of the government shutdown. Just take a listen. How are you guys feeling about just the whole situation?
You really want me to answer that? Trump and the Republicans need to get off their butt and start negotiating with the Democrats.
I mean, our whole system of government's set up for negotiations.
Coming back might be a little bit crazy, might be a tad bit crazy, but gotta get early. Hopefully, I'm not stuck.
Yeah, so the people flying out today, it's the return trips they're worried about. And as you said, DTW is one of those 40 airports. But we're also seeing additional airports being impacted. Here, Omaha, Nebraska is not on that 40 list, but you can see there's a flight canceled to that. And we have a Cleveland flight back there as well, canceled, leaving from DTW to Cleveland. So airports outside of that top 40 busiest list are also feeling those impacts. Andrew, I'm going to send it back to you, but live from DTW in Romulus, Michigan, I'm Brittany Toulis for Scripps News Group.
All right, Brittany, thank you. Got to wonder how much more red we will see as the day progresses. Some other headlines we are following this Friday morning. The Supreme Court's justices are holding a closed-door meeting today and will consider revisiting the court's decision from 10 years ago to legalize same-sex marriage. That possibility stems from a long-shot appeal from Kim Davis. She was the former Kentucky court clerk who refused to issue marriage license to same-sex couples after the court's 2015 ruling in Obergefell versus Hodges. Clarence Thomas is the only justice who is called to reverse that decision. The justices could say as early as Monday what they'll do. And Representative Elise Stefanik wants to become Governor Stefanik. The Republican Congresswoman announced her bid this morning to lead the state of New York. Stefanik is a close ally of President Trump's, and in a video announcing her bid, she called Democratic New York Governor Kathy Hochul the worst governor in America and said the state was the most unaffordable in the nation. A Republican hasn't been the governor of New York since 2007. And a federal judge has told government officials in Chicago to restrict the use of force against peaceful protesters in the media. The Trump administration claims that tear gas and other measures were needed to control what they called rioters, but the judge said she looked at the videos and saw neighborhood moms, not agitators. She went on to say that tear gassing or throwing protesters to the ground would have a chilling effect on individuals exercising their fundamental rights. She wants agents to issue warnings before using chemical weapons like pepper spray. The Trump administration says it will appeal the decision. And new insights this morning on just how far-reaching those concerns are. A new Scripps News Talker research poll reveals the deep-seated anxiety extending across the country and across party lines. An overwhelming majority of Americans say they are concerned about affording health care. Those findings revealed in a Scripps News Talker research poll taken ahead of open enrollment. Nearly 70% say they are somewhat or very concerned about affording their own insurance. 72% worry about paying for medical emergency, and 65% are concerned about the cost of prescriptions and medication.
Anytime things like health insurance increase, it makes you uncomfortable. Right now, everything is expensive. I don't need my insurance to also be a thorn in my side. I have to have it.
Also striking, 4 in 10 Americans say they have foregone medical treatment over concerns about cost. Washington has taken notice too, with Democrats fighting for Affordable Care Act subsidies to be tied to a deal to reopen the government. And as a quarter of the nation says health care is now the most important issue facing the country, up from 19% in August, second only to inflation and the cost of goods. And there are some findings that are positive in this poll as well. Overall, about 70% of respondents said they are happy with the quality of their care and have described their current care as affordable. But it's not the current cost and quality that is so many sounding the alarms. It is that uncertainty about what the future may hold. Dr. Omar Awan is with us now to go deeper in on this. He's a professor and the Vice Chair of Education at the University of Maryland's School of Medicine. Dr. Awan, thank you for being here. Whether it is the findings in this poll, our series on premium pain, the reporting from our stations around the country, it seems people right now are really, quite frankly, scared of what healthcare costs could be in the coming year. What is that impact from your perspective?
Well, what this poll shows, Andrew, is that Americans are deeply worried and concerned about healthcare and the rising costs in healthcare. And if you take a look at one of the statistics that you pointed out, 4 in 10 Americans would forego treatment because they can't afford it. I mean, that should be heartbreaking for anyone or any American that's listening to this. I mean, it should be 0 out of 10 Americans that would forego care because of cost. We are one of the wealthiest, if not the wealthiest nation on the globe. And it's unacceptable that 40% of Americans can't afford their health care. If you look at healthcare insurance, it should be a source of protection for Americans. But instead, I'm afraid to say that it's become a source of stress and anxiety for many Americans because of high deductibles, high copays, high surprise bills that they're not aware of. So it's certainly a fragmented system, and it absolutely needs reform going forward.
Yeah, and that was one of the findings that really stuck out to me as well, this idea of people just foregoing altogether medical treatments. What sort of impact could that have, not just on the individuals who have to make these decisions, but on the system as a whole, if you have as much as 40% of the country not getting needed treatments that ultimately can compound and lead to worse outcomes?
Exactly right, Andrew. Worse outcomes is the answer there. We're going to have exacerbation of many chronic medical conditions, things like, diabetes, obesity, heart disease. Imagine trying to get a medicine to cure your heart disease, but you can't because you can't afford it. Well, then over time, that's going to result in people getting sicker and then using the hospital much later on when they need it, and often when it's too late. And that's going to result in actually soaring healthcare prices even more, because what happens is that because you can't prevent a certain disease from occurring, you go to the hospital and you seek emergency care when it's too late and when the price will be insurmountable. So it actually is to the benefit of the federal government, to the benefit of healthcare organizations to make sure that healthcare is affordable so we reduce costs in the long term. And I think that's an important piece to what insurers and policymakers should consider going forward with respect to healthcare.
Coming up on Today As It Happened.
Kendrick Lamar scored the most nominations at the Grammys with 9 in total, followed by Lady Gaga and producers Circuit and Jack Antonoff, Bad Bunny, Leon Thomas, Sabrina Carpenter, all of whom have had really huge years.
Welcome back to Today As It Happened. Let's check back in on our daily briefing of today's top stories. If you dream of being a millionaire, that still won't get you into the same circle as Elon Musk. Musk could be the world's first trillionaire. Tesla shareholders voted on Thursday to give him Tesla stock worth $1 trillion if he hits certain performance targets in the next decade. This decision was heated. Some shareholders pointed to Tesla's sales dropping, along with market share and shrinking profits, and because of Musk himself and his venture into politics.
The 2026 Grammy Awards are just a couple of months away, and today we're getting a sneak peek at who has a chance of snagging at least one of the coveted trophies. Jack Irvin is a music writer and producer for People, and Jack, I was listening. No Doobie Brothers, no Chicago, no Earth, Wind and Fire, so I'll let you take it from there. The nominations are out. Any surprises?
It's a very interesting mix. We've got, Kendrick Lamar scored the most nominations at the Grammys with 9 in total, followed by Lady Gaga and producers Circuit and Jack Antonoff with 7 each. They work on a lot of pop albums that we've heard. Other top nominees include Bad Bunny, Leon Thomas, Sabrina Carpenter, all of whom have had really huge years.
Jack, if you don't follow the music scene closely, like you do, the only name that you've been hearing are 2 names, actually, Bad Bunny and Taylor Swift. But Taylor Swift was not nominated. Why?
So while Taylor released her blockbuster new album, The Life of a Showgirl, in October of this year, it came out about a month after the eligibility period for the 2026 Grammys closed at the end of August. So she wasn't necessarily snubbed this time around. The album is eligible for nominations at the 2027 Grammys.
You explain that to all the Swifties out there, though, that are going to be wondering. A couple new categories this year. Best Country Album broken down into 2 categories. Why?
So the Recording Academy added the Best Traditional Country Album category into the mix in June, and then there's also the Best Contemporary Country Album category. The traditional one is meant to highlight more traditional sounding country music, utilizing instruments like the acoustic guitar, steel guitar, fiddle, banjo, mandolin, you name it, live drums. It also includes subgenres like Western swing, outlaw country. So in the traditional category, you've got artists like Willie Nelson and actually his son Lucas. And then in the contemporary category, you've got artists like Kelsey Ballerini and Jelly Roll who take a more modern approach.
Jack, this next category is the one that speaks to people like me that can't hold a note and can't play an instrument. Grammy nominations outside of music. Who are we talking about?
So yeah, there's a category for audiobook narration, which is a very interesting one. In the past, it's gone to non-musicians like Michelle Obama and actress Viola Davis. This year, you've got, Fab Morvan of Milli Vanilli, who narrated a book. You've got comedian Trevor Noah, and then you've got the Dalai Lama.
So the Dalai Lama could be a Grammy winner. Any chance that the Dalai Lama will go to the Grammy presentations?
That's a very good question. I think you would have to ask the Dalai Lama himself.
Jack, finally, before I let you go, any predictions?
I think that top nominees like Kendrick Lamar and Lady Gaga, who they've won really big in the past, and I predict they'll be taking home a few awards this year. This year's Grammys also comes really shortly before the Super Bowl, and Bad Bunny is obviously doing the halftime show. He's had a huge year. It's possible he could go home with a trophy.
Jack Irvin with People. Jack, as always, thanks for being with us.
Up next on Today As It Happened.
A record number of immigrants now held in detention centers across the country. I'm Scripps News investigative reporter Patrick Terpstra with a look at 2 companies able to cash in.
And later,
I'm John Matarese. Most of us are familiar with credit card perks like earning airline miles, but I want to show you some hidden perks that most of us don't know about.
You're watching Today As It Happens, Scripps News rundown of the biggest events and stories of the day. Let's jump right back in.
On the immigration front, a record number of immigrants are now being held by ICE, many of them locked up in private detention centers as they await their deportation hearings. This week, we're getting a read on just how much money is pouring into those companies that operate private jails. Scripps News investigative reporter Patrick Terpstra is following the money for us. He's live in our D.C. newsroom. And Patrick, what have you found out?
Well, Del, all year long we've been trying to really take a look at exactly how much money is being made in the private sector as these immigration arrests ramp up. And the problem has been that these contracts have been so shrouded in secrecy, the government not sharing exactly which companies are making money, where they're making money. It gets even more complicated when you start talking about subcontractors. But two of the nation's largest operators of private immigration detention centers, they are public companies. We're talking about CoreCivic and Geo Group. And because they're public companies, they actually have to tell the public what it is they're making each quarter, how they're doing. And so that is what happened yesterday. Both companies gave us a window into their finances. One of those companies, Geo Group, saying they've got 6,000 beds now at immigration detention centers all around the country. That includes, by the way, Delaney Hall in New Jersey, which was where a congresswoman clashed with ICE last spring, leading to her arrest. Geo Group's third quarter update released yesterday shows that revenues have now increased 13%, fueled by ICE contracts, and that investors are on their way to having their best year ever. The other major operator of private jails is CoreCivic. Earlier this year, Scripps News, we visited a CoreCivic jail in Leavenworth, Kansas, as they were trying to ramp up to begin housing immigrants, and we saw dozens of people working there, a lot of subcontractors apparently on the scene there. We have not been able to tell exactly how that company has been doing as far as their bottom line until yesterday. A third quarter report from them shows that they have had a jump in revenue of 18% just last quarter. So a lot of things really looking good for both of these companies. And you heard really some jubilation among the two leaders of these companies during their phone calls with investors yesterday. Take a listen.
This represents the largest amount of new business that we have won in a single year in our company's history.
And so when you look at the growth that we're expecting for 2026, it's one of the fastest growth years, year over year, that we've experienced in a very long time as a company.
Now, the fact is the Trump administration is hoping to eventually have capacity to detain 100,000 immigrants. Right now, they've got about a little over 60,000 detained. So if you do the math there is still a lot more room to grow. Both of these companies making clear that in 2026, they have their eyes on increasing detention capacity for immigrants and continuing to expand those contracts with ICE. However, stocks for both CoreCivic and Geo Group actually dropped yesterday after news from their third quarter calls, which is some indication that as investors take a look at the road ahead, they're not so sure that those ICE contracts are going to continue to grow and continue to enhance their bottom lines as they have done all during 2025. Del.
Yeah, always important to point out those are people being held in those detention centers. Scripps News investigative correspondent Patrick Terpstra. Patrick, as always, we thank you.
And now let's look at some of our other top headlines of the day.
Another alleged drug boat struck in the Caribbean. 3 people dead this time. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth releasing this footage showing the boat bursting into flames. 70 people have been killed in those missile strikes, 18 different boats targeted. Hegseth saying the vessel was operated by a designated terrorist organization, but failed to offer any concrete evidence that they were actually smuggling drugs. The UN is calling on the U.S. to cease the campaign, saying the killings violate international law. The back and forth between the Trump administration and that federal judge continues, the judge telling the administration to fully fund SNAP today. The administration is appealing the ruling affecting 42 million Americans who rely on food assistance. The administration saying it could only cover about 35% of their benefits. The Vice President J.D. Vance calling the ruling absurd and said Democrats should reopen the government to fund the program.
Most of us are familiar with credit card perks such as rewards points or airline miles. But as you travel or shop this holiday season, there are some other hidden perks that you really should know about. For Maddie Jagger, her Amex Blue Cash Preferred turned shopping trips into extra cash.
Up to 6% back on groceries, up to $6,000.
Joe Lopez and Angelique Archer snagged 2% back on every purchase.
Getting the best bang for your buck is really important.
And a travel card can be your shortcut to miles and nicer seats.
You can actually buy a main cabin ticket and automatically upgrade to Comfort Plus.
But there's more to credit cards than points and miles, according to Anna Staples with Bankrate.
Some of the most useful perks actually are kind of under the radar.
Under the radar travel perks include luggage protection, priority boarding, free checked bags, airport lounge access, and trip cancellation or interruption insurance.
If something happens, for instance, because of bad weather and you are stuck somewhere.
And for holiday shopping, some cards offer extended warranties and purchase protection for online orders.
If it's stolen, if it's broken, and the merchant again refuses to help you out with that, you can get reimbursement from your credit card issuer.
A tip from Staples, don't ignore annual fees. If you don't use the perks, the fee won't be worth it. Also, you must pay with the card that offers the perk. Owning it isn't enough.
And always, always remember that you have to try and resolve the issue with the merchant or airline first.
For shopper Judy Reese,
I use my Discover card for everything.
those points add up so you don't waste your money. John Matarese, Scripps News Group.
Coming up on Today As It Happened.
A very powerful man within his country, but he's also beloved. They love Victor, and people that know him do. He's run a really great country, and he's got no crime, he's got no problems like some countries do, but probably has a couple of things that I don't know about, maybe that I don't want to know about.
We're glad you're back with Today As It Happened. I'm Andrew Rafferty here with your daily rundown of today's top stories.
In the last 10 months, President, what you have done, we are very much grateful for that. You restored the old level of the relationship. You improved the bilateral relation. You repair what was done badly by the previous administration. So now we are in quite a good position to open up a new chapter, let's say a golden age between United States and Hungary.
Stephanie, busy day where you are at the White House. The president meeting with Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban today. The war in Ukraine, front and center. What stood out to you from their nearly 40-minute Q&A with the press?
So they had kind of an extended conversation that initially the press wasn't scheduled to be there for. And, you know, Orban discussed how he wants to support President Trump's effort to get peace and to bring the Russia-Ukraine war to an end. But there was really one moment that I think exemplified Viktor Orban's view of the war and why supporters of Ukraine are worried about the influence that Viktor Orban might have on U.S. policy towards this war. Take a listen.
All the other governments prefer to continue the war because many of them think that Ukraine can win on the front line, which is a misunderstanding of the situation. So it's a complicated issue. We will discuss it. It requests not just 2 minutes to respond to your question, but rather than our lecture. Sorry, not to continue more than that.
To both of you. So you would say that Ukraine cannot win that war?
You know, miracle can happen.
Yeah, that's right.
A miracle could happen. So President Trump himself has been back and forth on whether Ukraine would need to cede territory in order to bring this war to an end. And the president has said that ending this war has been, trying to end this war has been harder than he anticipated before he returned to the White House for a second administration. Orban later in that meeting said that he had some ideas about bringing the war to an end, and he planned to present those ideas to the president in their meeting. The Prime Minister of Hungary leaving the White House about an hour ago after their meeting wrapped up.
Scripps News Washington correspondent Stephanie Liebergen for us at the White House. Stephanie, thank you very much. Let's continue our coverage right now with our international correspondent Jason Bellini. And Jason, you spent a lot of time on the ground in Ukraine. Viktor Orban and Hungary, they get 85 to 86% of their oil from Russia. They are a NATO ally. Square that circle for me, if you would.
That's one that NATO's trying to square as well, because Orban is saying to President Trump, I want an exemption. I want to be, along with Slovakia, be the only countries in the EU that continues to receive Russian oil. And he wants an exemption from the sanctions from the Trump administration. And President Trump appeared sympathetic to that. And from the Ukrainian perspective, they say that this really isn't about Hungary not being able to get oil from other sources. They say that this is about Orban's support, in their view, for the aggressor, for Putin.
Jason, no, I was going to say the president says Russia can't keep going at the rate that it is going. And he says the end of the war is on the horizon. You're someone who has been on the front lines now since this war began. How is it going?
I don't know where that horizon is that they're seeing, because at the moment, things look nowhere closer to peace. And also on the front line itself, the war is at its most brutal. And right now, you remember the battle for Bakhmut, right? A few years ago. Well, there's something comparable to that happening right now in a place called Pokrovsk, a place that we visited ourselves when you could. Right now, this is a valley of death.
So desperate is the push to save Pokrovsk that Ukrainian intelligence flew American Blackhawks full of commandos into Russian drone-patrolled airspace. A brazen run, underscored by the Ukrainians themselves with dramatic music, signaling they won't let this city go without a fight. Pokrovsk is the gateway to Ukraine's last major strongholds in Donetsk, which Putin wants to control entirely. Taking it would leave key cities for Ukraine's army vulnerable and hand the Kremlin a storyline of momentum, the kind of victory Moscow craves as the war drags on. For more than a year, Pokrovsk has teetered on the edge, but last fall it was still safe enough for us to move through on a trip to the front.
Right now we're driving quickly through Pokrovsk, a city that may be on the brink of being taken by the Russians.
It remained just out of Russia's reach until now. In recent weeks, Russian units found hairline fractures in the defenses, widening them into spear points that slice through the city core, leaving blocks of Pokrovsk colored in contested gray. Drones have given Russia the edge. That glistening on the field, the strange sparkle in the dirt, is fiber optic cable used to guide the Russian suicide drones that have been slamming the city and clearing the way for small teams of Russian soldiers to claw forward. Ukraine posts about victories. FPV drones picking off Russian infantry one by one as Russia sends them in without regard for losses. A Ukrainian sniper claims a 4-kilometer shot using AI to assist him, a record if verified. And Ukraine says it destroyed this Russian munitions site near Pokrovsk, a brief flash of advantage. Inside the city, Ukrainian troops say they've pushed back into the city council building in the center. They call the fight highly dynamic, street to street, door to door. A country is fighting for every block and every breath.
Make no mistake, there's also some sharp criticism within Ukraine itself of the decision to defend this city, fight for this city at all costs, Del.
Bottom line, though, is the president said that Russia's losing about 7,000 troops a week.
These numbers are very hard to verify, though. The most recent numbers we heard in the aggregate is that Russia has 1 million casualties. It's a vast, vast number. Ukraine, according to some analysts, about less than half of that. How many of those are deaths? How many of those are long-term injuries? That we don't know. But the point being that it is a bloodbath out there. There's this meme that's going around in Ukraine, and it shows President Putin applauding as, this is a meme, mind you, that as Russian troops are going into a meat grinder, and that's what they see Pokrovsk is, that he just doesn't care. And yeah, they're dying, we don't know the exact number, but they are dying very fast. And you saw yourself right there in some of those videos from the FPV drones where you see people in their final moments.
You know, it's interesting. The Vietnam Veterans Memorial has 58,000 names on the wall, by sharp contrast. Jason Bellini, our international correspondent. Jason, thank you very much.
Up next on Today As It Happened.
The FAA's order to reduce flights has caused anxiety for travelers. One airline CEO warning that passengers should have a backup plan. I'm Maura Barrett. Coming up, how airlines are helping passengers navigate delays and cancellations.
Democrats would like to see an end to this shutdown, and we want to respect Leader Thune's desire not to negotiate on ACA until after the government reopens. Therefore, we'd like to offer a simple proposal that would reopen the government and extend the ACA premium tax credits simultaneously, and then have the opportunity to start negotiating longer-term solutions to health care costs.
Welcome back to Today As It Happened. I'm Andrew Rafferty, and let's jump right back into our rundown of the top stories of the day.
Happening right now, the Senate debating a new Democratic proposal to end the government shutdown. This is day 38. Minority Leader Chuck Schumer saying his party will vote on a funding bill if Republicans agree to extend Obamacare subsidies for 1 full year.
After so many failed votes, it's clear we need to try something different. What the Senate is doing isn't working for either party and isn't working for the American people. Democrats have said we must address the health care crisis. But Republicans have repeatedly said they won't negotiate to lower the health care costs until the government reopens. So let's find a path to honor both positions.
In the meantime, the shutdown is causing major travel headaches across the country. More and more of you going to the airport over the weekend, not knowing whether your flight will be delayed or canceled. The FAA now rolling out those flight restrictions we've been talking about. Right now, 4%, it will be 10% in the days ahead. Scripps News business and tech correspondent Mara Barrett is live at Denver International Airport. And Mara, every airline has its own strategy for figuring out this mess. What about customers? How do they navigate it?
Well, Del, that 4% reduction starting today, I actually just got new data from an aviation analytics firm looking at the numbers today. It actually is shaking out to be closer to a 2 to 3% reduction in flights across the country, which is good news. About 800 flights canceled, but 93% of the ones that remain are taking off on time. Now, all of that said, remember, international and hub-to-hub flights shouldn't be affected for now. And most airlines are saying that they're going to be able to get folks rebooked onto a flight within the next 4 hours or so. You can see some of the numbers we've been tracking today in terms of the delays and cancellations by airlines. But either way, as much as they're all trying to navigate it together, they are forecasting to customers to be prepared for changes. Flight anxiety is reaching new levels.
It's very frustrating.
We'll have to adapt as everybody else will have to.
With flights at 40 major airports on the chopping block as an emergency order by the FAA mandated reductions due to the government shutdown.
It is not a science, it is an art that we're trying to deploy to keep people safe in the airspace.
Delta, United, and American Airlines have waived fees for travelers who want to cancel or change their upcoming flights, a move that allows for some flexibility, according to aviation expert Chris Dane.
Even for folks like in basic economy where they're non-refundable, they're allowing them to be refunded during this period. So the airlines are acting responsibly.
The CEO of budget airline Frontier warning passengers should buy a backup ticket if headed to a wedding, funeral, or other must-attend event. The FAA ordered flight reductions start at 4%, impacting hundreds of flights. That's supposed to rise to 6% on Tuesday, 8% on Thursday, and 10% by the end of next week. Even with recent upgrades to TSA technology to make air travel smoother for customers,
you're good to go.
Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy Friday said the decision stems from systemic issues in air traffic control.
We have more complaints from pilots about stress from air traffic controllers and more complaints about the lack of responsiveness from controllers.
Duffy largely blames Democrats for the shutdown. Dane argues the shortage of air traffic controllers is not political.
It doesn't matter what party you're affiliated with. You're both traveling and everybody's upset.
Now, Chris Dane, the aviation expert you just heard from there, basically is forecasting if the government shutdown does come to an end in the next couple of days, all of this at the airports will return to business as usual pretty quickly as air traffic controllers get back to work and are getting paid. The big key problem will be if it continues to drag on even closer to the Thanksgiving holiday. That will mean even more headaches for travelers, especially when you think of the day after Thanksgiving is usually the single busiest travel day of the year, Del.
Mara, earlier this year, the Trump administration rolled back those proposed Biden-era protections for travelers because of situations like this. Where do those protections stand now?
A lot of it is up to the airline's discretion. And right now, a lot of those airlines are offering the free changes that we discussed, as well as refunds if you're canceling or rescheduling your flight. The big key element here is what happens in terms of funding for lodging or meals if you have to get stuck somewhere overnight because your flight got delayed. That's something that the Biden administration's proposal would have legally required airlines to compensate. But once President Trump took office, they quickly rolled that back. So again, you'll want to check with your individual airline to see how that might affect you if that's something that ultimately happens to you as a traveler this weekend or going into next week, Del.
Our business and tech correspondent Mara Barrett for us live in Denver. Mara, thank you very much.
Coming up on Today As It Happened.
I've seen some headlines that are a little bit misleading saying far left Democrats really were the winner. And while Mamdani is considered far left, I wouldn't say Spanberger and Sherrill, the new governors-elect of New Jersey and Virginia, are considered far left. They're seen as fairly centrist. But the thing that they all have in common, Andrew, is that those candidates ran on affordability.
Well, it is Friday, and that means a peek into the week that was in politics with the host of the podcast, Grounded, Maritza Giorgio. Maritza is joining us from Missoula, Montana. Maritza, it is great to see you. This is sort of our touch grass moment, that perspective outside the Beltway when we get so caught up with the ins and outs of what's going on in Washington. We just had a round of big elections on Tuesday. Montana, even for somebody like me, wasn't necessarily on the bingo card, but we did see some pretty striking results, not far from where we are over the river in Virginia, New Jersey, of course, New York City, a big night for Democrats. Did that surprise you at all?
You know, what surprised me about that was the margins. Right? Just the landslide victories in places like New Jersey and Virginia. And I've seen some headlines that are a little bit misleading saying far left Democrats really were the winner. And while Mamdani is considered far left, I wouldn't say Spanberger and Sherrill, the new governors-elect of New Jersey and Virginia, are considered far left. They're seen as fairly centrist. But the thing that they all have in common, Andrew, is that those candidates ran on affordability. But then you take a look at states like California, where there wasn't a candidate on the ballot, and they had so much participation, voter participation, to vote for Prop 50. You look at places like Georgia, where there are Democratic members now elected to the Public Service Commission for the first time in 25 years. You look at the Supreme Court races in Pennsylvania. You know, there was obviously a clear message sent during this election cycle. And like I said, I expected there to be some Democratic wins, but the wide swath of wins and the margins that they won by was really what surprised me.
Yeah, you know, minority communities, suburban voters, a lot that we saw kind of gravitate towards the right in 2024 seem to at least go back for one night on Tuesday night. We'll see if that continues in the midterms.
And
but I also want to talk about
you. I forgot one more thing, and that is the shift that so many voters took to the left when you compare it to 2024. And I was going through like the Virginia counties, and I think all but 5 shifted left in the gubernatorial race compared to the presidential race in 2024. And while some were just by a few points, there was one county over 20 points shifted to the left. So that's a really big deal. And I think now the test for Democrats is how they keep up this momentum and keep it going into 2026.
Yeah, so some new faces from Tuesday that will now be taking the mantle of the Democratic Party. Another notable one that is a departure, that of course being Nancy Pelosi saying she will not run again for re-election. We have some sound from House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries on his reflections about her. Let's take a listen.
Nancy D'Alessandro Pelosi will go down in history as the greatest speaker of all time. Her tenure has been iconic, legendary, historic, and transformational.
So, Maritza, that was a congressman from New York. California Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi, of course, is the one retiring from San Francisco. What do you think her legacy will be, specifically in your part of the country, the kind of the Midwestern part where, she might not have been the most popular individual, but perhaps respected for her ability to lead?
Yeah, well, I mean, when you talk about being out in rural America and Western Montana, Nancy Pelosi was basically a figure in every single attack ad on Democratic candidates here for the last couple of decades, because the Republicans in the state definitely wanted to paint the Democrats in the state as always siding with Nancy Pelosi. Then it became Chuck Schumer, and so there's been a vilification of her. But no doubt, I mean, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene was heard talking about this in an interview about how Nancy Pelosi really is an icon, and what she has done for her party and leadership in her party can't be ignored. And Marjorie Taylor Greene even said she wished her own leadership in the Republican Party could get things done for the Republicans the way Nancy Pelosi got things done for the Democrats. You think about her being, just this trailblazer. She's the first woman elected Speaker of the House. That's a really big deal. And I think about every time I see her age, I constantly have to kind of check myself, because she runs around Capitol Hill in these little, high heels and pantsuits, and she gets things done. And then, of course, we can't forget her legacy in the meme world, right? We had that whole clapping incident and that iconic picture and imagery, putting on her sunglasses, walking out of the White House. She's a tough woman, and she has certainly made her mark on our nation's history. How people will remember her will probably vary from state to state, region to region, like you said. But no doubt you can't ignore that she made history.
Yeah, and Maritza, before we let you go, let us know, what do you got ahead on the Grounded podcast with former Democratic Senator Jon Tester?
Yeah, so we actually just recorded a live episode this morning with Sharon McMahon, America's government teacher. She's an incredible source of knowledge. I consider myself to be pretty read in on the news, but I'm always learning things from her accounts on Instagram about the way things work in a really simple way. So we had a really wonderful chat with her this morning. You can see that on Substack, YouTube, and we're going to post the audio version too on podcasts. And then on Monday, we have author Michael Wolff. We're going to talk all things Epstein with him. He was, he said he had more than 100 hours of interviews with Jeffrey Epstein. I think I said, did I say Michael? Jeffrey Epstein. And he also was the president's biographer at one point. So we have a lot to talk to him about, especially as we continue to see Representative-elect Adelita Grijalva not be sworn in, and the speculation swirling around that, and whether that has anything to do with her demanding to release the Epstein files, her being the decisive vote there.
All right, Maritza Giorgio, host of the podcast Grounded. Add it to your podcast rotation. Maritza, thanks for joining us. Thank you for joining us on Today As It Happened. I'm Andrew Rafferty. Have a great Friday night and an excellent weekend.